need to start at the beginning and kind of how you got into sort of, basically into music and your first memories of music and drums. I'm really, really interested in that.
Yeah, so I started music at a fairly early age. And yeah, first of all, got into things like piano. And when I was going through primary school, I started playing the flute, and that sort of transpired into playing saxophone. The natural progression for that is, even though the mouthpiece is different, the fingering is actually exactly the same. So that's kind of how that happened. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I always wanted to play drums. I think my family were always like, "Oh God, drums are noisy." But there was one kid in the village who had this drum kit, and he was giving up drumming. And I said, "Oh, do you want to get rid of your drum kit?" Didn't ask my parents or anything. And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Oh, I've got this old push bike frame." He said, "Oh yeah, I really want that." I said, "Well, do you want to swap?" So we swapped, and my mum said she'll never forget this, but she heard this banging and crashing coming down this little village street where we lived, and she thought, "What is that?" And then all of a sudden she looks out the window, and there's this army of children with me at the front with this bass drum. And she says to herself, "Oh God, that's coming to my house."
What have I done?
So that ended up being, how that sort of, my drumming career sort of started from then onwards. I had this drum kit. It was called a Thunder, and it was really loud, and it was brilliant fun, and it got me into playing drums. So happy days.
How about music? I mean, have you got any early memories of particular artists and bands that were playing in the house? Albums that you liked?
Yes. So, I mean, both my mum and dad, they don't play instruments, but they're both big fans of music and collecting albums. My dad was a massive Dire Straits fan. My mum loved things like Meat Loaf, bands like that. So I grew up around a lot of sort of rock music, guitar-based music. And my stepbrother, he used to come round to my house and give me little mixtapes on cassette. For stuff that he was listening to, and bands like Ramones, Nirvana, things like that. That's what got me into wanting to play drums, which kind of led into my first little school band, which was playing Nirvana covers in the bedroom, making loads of noise, which was great fun.
I think, mate, millions of drummers, it goes without saying, around the world would be completely influenced by Dave Grohl, and especially Nirvana. Such a phenomenal, passionate song kind of drummer, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's got a great sound, and for me it was always, like when you hear Dave Grohl play the drums, you know it's him straight away. And for me, in terms of, that's what I love about different drummers, when you can hear their personality come through their playing. And I think Dave Grohl is a really great example of that. Did
you play to records, or did you have lessons, or a bit of both?
So first of all, for me, when I first started playing drums, there wasn't any rules in terms of it was for a goal of practicing to grade 8 or something like that. It was mainly a hobby and a fun exercise, and I got hooked on it straight away. But I was playing along to my favourite CDs and favourite albums, and had my little stereo turned up flat out. We were very lucky because our neighbours, the lady that lived next door, she was an elderly lady, and she was part deaf, so she couldn't actually hear me playing. I was very lucky because I was able to play a lot. And straight away sort of started a little band with my mates at school. My brother was getting into playing guitar as well. He was really into Slipknot. So between of us, it was a house full of metal music, basically.
I'm aware from you telling me in the past that Andy Gangadin, the great Andy Gangadin, is a massive influence and became a friend of yours. And I know you guys have worked together a lot. I'm really interested if you'd like to share how Andy sort of came into your life and how he kind of helped develop your drumming, or, your career.
Yeah, so if we fast forward a few years from secondary school, I went off to sixth form college, and it was kind of there when I made the decision: do you want to pursue music, or do you want to pursue something else as a potential career? And went to the college and saw the course that they were offering, this BTEC diploma course, and straight away that's what sold it to me. So anyway, went through that, did that course, loved it, playing in loads of bands at college, and then that led me on to go to ACM in Guildford. As I was going through ACM, I did everything I could to get into as many playing situations as possible. One of the teachers there asked me to come and play for a showcase for some production students. And he then, at the time, he knew of, he was contacted by a management company who were looking for a drummer for like a hip hop rock band. And for me, I jumped at the opportunity for it because it's sort of Rage Against the Machine,
Perfectly, yeah.
groovy, amazing. So anyway, the band was called Inner City Dwellers, and so I was fortunate enough to get the opportunity to play with these guys. So we did lots of rehearsing, lots of writing, traveling to London backwards and forwards. It was my first taste of a proper gig, Fast forward a couple of years, as that project's still going, Patrick, the singer in Inner City Dwellers, has become the frontman for Chase and Status.
Ah, okay.
So Chase and Status obviously approached Andy Gangadine for doing a live show, and that's where I really got into Andy's playing, because it's all the energy of a rock drummer with all the electronic sounds. And in this roundabout way, I'd sort of briefly met Andy Gangadine a couple of years ago, and then the frontman of the band I was in was the frontman of the Chase and Status band. And that kind of led over another couple of years for me meeting Andy and actually getting the opportunity to play in front of him. And he was MDing lots of different bands. And he still is at the time, stuff like Rudimental, Chase and Status. So he gave me the opportunity to, he took my details and kept in contact with me and gave me the opportunity to learn about electronics. I mean, I remember the first time I was fortunate enough to go to his studio and his massive Gangascope kit was there. And he said I could play it. And I sat at this kit and it was this absolute spaceship of drums. I was like, this is unbelievable. And for me, it was this, the whole marrying of electronic music, which I was into and I got more into as I went through college, with the energy of rock drums. And the fact that I managed to sort of meet Andy, who shared a very similar enthusiasm for those two things, has had a massive, massive impact on my career. And, Andy sort of showed me the ropes and then, encouraged me to come up with my own way of doing this word hybrid drumming. One thing I'll never forget is when I was at college, my music business lecturer, a chap called Adam Payne, he said, the people in this room you will work with for the rest of your career. And at the time, I wasn't really convinced of what he was saying, but in a roundabout way, you can piece every piece of this puzzle back to that room. So they're dead right in what they say. So my advice to anyone that's going to college or wants to get into being a professional drummer, a musician, is take that advice on board and get yourself into as many situations socially and playing as possible.
I really want to talk, because obviously for the last 3.5 years, you've been working with Anne-Marie, and I personally saw you for the very first time in April of 2017. I was blown away, mate. I actually hadn't seen you play before that night, and I made a point of finding out who you were, and I think we very, very briefly spoke each other backstage, didn't we?
Yeah, I remember. I think we were in catering. So the first part of that tour was an arena run. So that was when you came to the Amsterdam show.
Yeah.
I mean, at the time, I'd done a couple of sort of arena shows in the world of doing. I think we opened for Rudimental at the O2 Arena, and did a couple of bits. But there was just this level of massive anxiety of, oh my God, it's an arena. Oh my God, look at these people. So the first couple of shows, they were just a whirlwind of like, oh my God, we're actually doing this, and don't make any mistakes. And get your head in the game, because there was just so much to take in. I actually found it quite hard at the beginning to sort of get my head firmly in the game of the gig. I mean, we'd done the set quite a bit before, but it was weird. I was thinking of all sorts of weird things whilst playing.
Can I ask, mate? So obviously going in at that level was massive. Had you done, like before you joined Ed's tour, obviously, which is obviously a massive tour, had you done many shows live with Anne-Marie before that, before you got to that level, or was it suddenly a huge leap at that level? Had you done a tour with her?
Yes, we'd done quite a few shows beforehand. So we'd started off. So I'd been playing with Anne-Marie pretty much since day one of her doing a live show.
Okay.
So it was nice to sort of see a progression, because we went from playing venues like the Deaf Institute in Manchester to the most recent London headlines, which was 2 Hammersmith Apollos. Obviously learnt a lot throughout that journey, but I still at that when we got to that stage, we hadn't done, like I said, we'd maybe done a couple of arena promo things, but not an arena tour. And I felt like straight away there's just a completely different atmosphere that's great, but it still caught me by surprise, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
We'd been doing shows where it was like a weekend away and you'd be at home, throughout the week. And the challenge from going from that to sort of spending 2, 3, 4 I mean, with the stadium run, we spent, I think we counted, we were home for 10 days in a 9-month period. So we were just out solid the whole
Wow.
time. So that brings in
That's,
a challenge
that's
in
tough.
itself as well.
Yeah.
So the key with all of it is to relax and pace yourself. You've got to settle into it because, for instance, you know, touring for that long and so fortunate to be part of that tour, which is a really great family to be a part of. You know, they become your family whilst you're on the road. So, you know, you've just got to settle in all manners really to make the most of the experience.
Now, I guess it kind of leads us sort of nicely to drums. Like, obviously, we love drums. We love the sound of great drums, and
Yes.
we both play a great drum company. You know. So, do you remember when you came over to Natal again?
Yes, so it was actually halfway through the Ed Sheeran run. So there was an act on first called Jamie Lawson, and the drummer Shay, he was playing Natal kit. And throughout that tour, I just remember going out sound check and listening to this kit, and it just sounded monstrous. It's like, these drums sound amazing. And I said to Shay, I said, can I have a little bash on the kit? And he's like, yeah. So I was just playing this big silver sparkle kit, and I was like, just straight away just felt these drums sing. I don't have to work to get the sound that I want.
And you've got a Walnut original series kit, right?
Yes, yeah. So I had this one for a while. This one's been out on tour as well, but I've got a custom white and black one which is in a lockup at the moment.
I mean, obviously, the drums themselves are so well made and they sound so great. But I definitely, I think you've got a great way of tuning, like especially your toms, man. They sound really warm. They've got a lovely tone to them.
Well, I've always found it hard, particularly with 12-inch toms. But with this kit, with the Walnut kits, I remember first coming up to Natal to have a look at the kits. I literally sat down, tweaked it a couple of minutes, and just went dung dung. I was like, the sound's there. I didn't have to do anything.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for instance, when I first got the kit sent down to me, I was living in a flat in London and I had no space to actually set it up but I needed to take it to rehearsal. So I needed to put the heads on it, sort heads out and just get it right. So I literally tuned this kit just by tapping it with my finger and went, oh, that sounds ballpark. It'll be all right. Took it into rehearsal, dung, 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 dung. All the sound is there, did nothing else to it. And that was it.
I think it suits your style. And I think it definitely complements your kind of hybrid kind of thing that you do between electronics and drums. I mean, I'm interested in, obviously, acoustic drums have been your first love, especially being, you know, into rock music, and you love that power and that tightness of hip hop and stuff. But when did electronics kind of come into your life as well, as far as wanting to add them to the kit?
Well, in terms of my listening to electronic music, that sort of picked up when I was at ACM, and it was a natural progression because, you know, I was really into things like the Prodigy and stuff like that, and that's got this real rock and punk sort of attitude to it, and it's basically a rock gig but with electronic beats. And I was really into that straight away, and naturally because of that, and in the projects I got involved in, you know, I was a massive fan of the way Andy takes things, because, for instance, Andy's approach to hybrid drumming is to keep electronic sounds electronic and acoustic sounds acoustic. Now, I know some people maybe choose to use triggers on the acoustic drums, but he likes to blend of both that way. So moving into gigs like the Anne-Marie gig, for instance, and the Wilkinson gig, it's kind of like there's elements in there where it's like big rock drums and they just have to sound like big rock drums. And then there's very, very, you know, snap to the grid production in terms of, you know, everything's quantized and it's very disciplined because of that, because of the way stuff's been produced. So then you want the sound from the record, and you don't necessarily want the sound from the record with your 22-inch bass drum, for instance.
What do you have as your main snare drum with your kit?
I've got a 13x7. I've got two. I've got the dark bronze, I believe, is the model, and I've got the original Walnut series as well, 13x7, and I really like that because with the size of my kit, because I've got quite a lot of drums and a lot of pads as well, I find that the 13x7 is the perfect size because it's got the depth of a 14, so it's still big, but I can get my other pads, my auxiliary electronic pads, closer to my left leg effectively. It just creates a bit more of space. There's a lot of ways of achieving the sound you want as a drummer, but for me, the sound that I want Natal gives without any effort, which means that I can focus into my playing more than
playing.
You know what it's like with an instrument. I think everybody does. So they go down, and you can quite quickly work out whether it's working for you or not, and everyone will have a different preference at the end of the day. But for me, I just love how those Natal drums sing, regardless of what head's on. They just sound great. So.
No, they really do. Like, everything I've heard that you've put up with the Natal stuff you've done sounds fantastic. So going back to Wilkinson and Gracie, I'm interested in hearing about them, and if anything you want to share about how you got the Wilkinson gig.
So Wilkinson was my first kind of pop gig, even though, so getting back to Inner City Dwellers and meeting Andy Gangadine, he called me up one day and said, look, I've got this audition for this chap Wilkinson. I wondered if you'd be interested of auditioning. And straight away I was, Wilkinson for me, I'm a massive drum and bass fan. So to be asked to do drum and bass was amazing. And I went down, did the audition, met Mark, met management and stuff like that. And I was fortunate enough to get that gig. Most recently, the last sort of gig I did was at Brixton Academy in February with him and his live show, and it's been really nice to be involved in that show. And like I say, I had an acrylic Natal kit for that because we had the way the lighting was working. They wanted the light to come, and that kit, man, it sounds unbelievable.
Is that loud? Is the acrylic kit's loud?
Yeah, but it's got so much depth, really low, big drums, and it's just it just fits the bill so well. That's the thing, man. I think like with getting back to gear, but they're just what they can offer at that sort of price point. I really don't think I'm not saying this just because I'm fortunate enough to be sponsored by Natal. I'm saying this to anyone. I think that for that price point, you're getting a real professional kit that will do everything you want it to do. And I feel like as a drum company out there, and I'm not going to name names of all the others, but you're getting such a premium product at a budget price. So it's for instance, for an aspiring pro drummer, I would always recommend Natal because it's a more affordable solution. The support that I've received from the companies and throughout this, and as this changing time, I can't thank George and everyone at Natal enough, really, because if we've all had to sort of change what we do, and that has sometimes meant that we've had to change the gear and things that we use. So to still have that level of support through this really not great time for any of our industry is insane. So massive thanks to them.
You've got a lot of experience, man, a lot of experience, and you've been all around the world and you've learned a lot of things. And again, I guess sort of part of an interview thing, it's kind of a cliche question, but I know for young and up and coming players that want to learn from people like yourself, is there any main things you'd like to sort of tell people that they should be aware of, getting into being a drummer? What things to look out for? What's important?
Yeah. This gets back to the point we were talking about earlier when it came to living on the road and space. Now, when I hear you play, for instance, you create space within a song, and I feel like sometimes this can be lost. So I think it's really important to practice your craft and practice your technique, but also to respect the space of the music and respect the situation that you're in, and just to remember that that's your job as a drummer, really. I personally feel that that's probably the thing that I can take away from any experience the most. I remember watching an online, it was on YouTube. I remember watching a performance that you did, I think, fairly recently with Mike and the Mechanics.
Okay, yeah.
And I just the groove, man. As a drummer, we've got to hold a groove, and there's nothing more, in my opinion, there's nothing more satisfying than holding a wicked sounding groove that's just keeping everyone together. I think it's always worth remembering what the audience there to see, and where does your playing fit into that?
Well, I just want to say that on a personal level, mate, it's been really great to chat to you and hear more about your career and your amazing achievements. And I just think
likewise, mate.
I think you're just getting going, man. I'm really excited to see where things are going to head for you in the coming years, mate. And I just want to thank you for taking part, and I'm sure, like me, mate, I want to thank Natal for asking me to do this and to speak to
massive
Oli
thanks
today.
to Natal.
Respect.
Yeah, no.
And
thanks again for having me, mate. I really appreciate it,
mate. You're welcome. And please take care of yourself, and we'll speak soon. All right.
Yeah, nice one.